This is The Space Shot, episode 187 for November 17th, 2017. Lunokhod 1 and Luna 17. Hey everyone, welcome to The Space Shot, your daily space history, pop culture, and news fix. I'm John Molnix. I've got a quick update on some rocket launches. More scrubs have met yet another change in schedules this week. There seems to have been quite the concentration of scrubs lately. I'm looking forward to these flights actually lifting off here soon. The Falcon 9 Zuma launch should take place today, the 17th, or possibly the 18th. SpaceX postponed yesterday's launch due to some data that the company had gathered on a test for another Falcon 9 fairing. The fairing is what encapsulates the payload, giving the rocket the aerodynamics needed for launch, while also protecting the satellite that's inside. Fairing jettison takes place once the rocket has reached a high enough altitude where Earth's atmosphere no longer has any meaningful effect on the launch vehicle. Depending on what SpaceX has to look at for fairing data, the launch could go off as planned today, or if the data shows a potential issue with the fairing, the launch could slip further. This will be the 17th launch of the year for SpaceX once the Falcon 9 Zuma mission has completed. This launch also has a landing scheduled back at LZ-1, and if successful, this will be the 20th landing for SpaceX. The Delta II rocket carrying the JPSS-1 satellite is scheduled to lift off early tomorrow morning. For my listeners overseas, the 1:47 a.m. Pacific Standard Time launch will be easier to catch than it is for those of us here in the United States. I'll link to the live stream on Facebook and Twitter, so make sure to follow me there to snag that link. I do have one piece of space history I didn't fit in yesterday's episode. The Skylab 4 mission launched on November 16, 1973, and the crew spent 84 days in orbit. I'm not in too big of a hurry to talk about that mission, since they did spend 84 days in space. I'll have more on Skylab 4 over the coming weeks, but I did want to include that milestone here. Luna 17 touched down on the lunar surface on November 17, 1970. This spacecraft carried the first rover to land on the moon, Lunokhod 1. This mission was the second attempt by the Soviets to land a robotic rover on the surface of the moon. The first attempt had failed the previous year. Lunokhod 1 was primitive when compared with modern-day robotic rovers, but it effectively explored the lunar surface for a lot longer than its design life. The rover operated for 322 Earth days, and during that time it captured over 20,000 TV images and hundreds of high-resolution panoramas. Pictures weren't the only thing sent back to Earth. The rover also analyzed soil samples and sent that data back to Earth. The rover was also fitted with a laser retroreflector, something which was used decades later by scientists here in the United States. I'm linking to a Space.com article on the discovery of the rover. It's cool how NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter was used to gather images of the landing and roving site for Luna 17. The article also talks about how the laser retroreflector can return important science, even though the mission has been finished since 1971. The Soviets had to rely on robotic landers and rovers due to the cancellation of their manned lunar program. The Luna missions were initially meant to complement human missions, but they ended up providing the Soviets with their only source of lunar sample returns. Back in episode 133, I briefly mentioned the Luna 16 mission, which brought back surface material in 1970. In episode 22, I talked a little bit about the Luna 2 mission, which carried a pennant that impacted the moon. A copy of this pennant is on display at the Cosmosphere in Hutchinson, Kansas, and the other copy is housed at the Eisenhower Presidential Library in Abilene, Kansas. I've got one birthday I want to mention today. On November 17, 1790, August Ferdinand Mobius was born in Saxony. Mobius was a theoretical astronomer and mathematician that's known for the Mobius strip. I'm linking to an explanation of a Mobius strip that's available on Wolfram Math World, so check that out if you've never heard of a Mobius strip or if you want a refresher. Since you're here, why don't you let me know what you think of the podcast by leaving a review in iTunes. It takes just a minute to do that, and it makes a huge difference because it helps even more people find the show. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of my daily episodes. As always, the show notes have more information on today's episode. Hit me up on Instagram and Twitter. Find me at John Molnix. I'm always up to chat. You can also connect with me on Facebook. Just search The Space Shot or click the link in the show notes. Tomorrow, Ranger 2, Kobe, and Generations. I'm John Molnix, and I'll catch you on the flip side.